All right, let's talk about a piece of history that's been almost completely forgotten. We're going to uncover this incredible story, a tale of amazing technology that let people master the oceans thousands of years ago. We're digging into the lost science of ancient Tamil shipbuilding.
So, let me ask you something right off the bat. Could an ancient wooden ship, a really old one, actually survive a direct lightning strike? Imagine it. You're out on the open sea, a massive storm rolls in, and bam! Lightning hits the mast. Your first thought is probably, no way, it's a goner. But you know what? The real answer is way more advanced than you'd think.
Believe it or not, the answer is a big, fat yes. The ancient Tamils, especially during the time of the Cholas and Pandyas, they came up with this brilliant system. Get this, they would cover both ends of the mast, that huge pole holding up the sails, with copper. So when lightning struck, the copper would act like a perfect conductor. It would just guide all that crazy energy safely down the mast and right into the ocean. It's kind of like modern dipole discharging technology, which is just a fancy way of saying you give a massive electrical charge a safe path to travel.
And this lightning rod thing, it wasn't just some lucky fluke, not at all. It was just one piece of a much bigger puzzle, a really deep, long-standing tradition of being incredible at sea. For centuries, the Tamils weren't just sailors, they were true masters of the ocean.
Now I know what you might be thinking. Is this just a cool story or is there proof? Well, it is absolutely backed by solid evidence. We can piece it all together from a bunch of different sources, like ancient Tamil Sangam literature, those super detailed maps from Roman geographers like Ptolemy, and of course, actual archaeological finds that have been dug up all over the region.
Just to give you an idea of the sheer scale we're talking about, there's an ancient text called the Kapal Sastram, and according to one study of it, their biggest ships could be up to 179 cubits long. So what does that mean? That's almost 270 feet. We're talking over 80 meters. These were not little fishing boats, folks. These were absolute giants of the sea.
And this whole shipbuilding culture, it was so deep in their DNA that they literally carved it into stone. Check this out. There's a pillar in a Jain temple, and right there on it is a detailed carving of a boat out on the sea. It's a permanent piece of art that shows you just how central the ocean was to their entire way of life.
Okay, so the big question is, how on earth did they build these things? It wasn't just a matter of throwing some wood together. No, this was a highly evolved art form, something that was perfected over many, many generations. The whole process was it was a masterpiece of design, built up one step at a time.
Their innovation was so clever because it started so simply. First, it was just a guy on a single log. Then they thought, hey, let's tie two logs together. And boom, you have a catamaran, a word that, by the way, comes straight from the Tamil language. From there, they just kept adding logs, evolving from these simple rafts into the massive, complex ships that would eventually rule the waves.
And they didn't just have one type of ship. Oh no, their fleet was incredibly diverse. They had a tool for every job, right? You had your basic catamaran types, which were perfect for zipping along the coast. Then you had the thani types. These were your all-purpose boats, good for everything from fishing to fighting. And then you had the valam types. These were the real giants, the massive vessels built for long-distance trade and exploring the unknown.
So what was guiding this whole process? It was something called the Sastras. Now, this wasn't just an instruction manual. Think of it more like a complete philosophy, a whole body of knowledge with rules and beliefs for every single step of the way. For the ancient Tamils, building a ship wasn't just a job. It was a science, and it was deeply connected to tradition.
And the Sastras got really specific. For example, they believed that the color of the wood itself had a deeper meaning. If you found a black tree, that was a bad sign. It could bring harm. A reddish tree? They thought it meant a lizard was living inside. But a tree with white wood? That was the good stuff. That was the perfect material you needed for a strong, reliable ship.
But it wasn't just superstition. The whole process was also tied to hardcore math and astronomy. They would take incredibly precise measurements of the tree trunk, run a bunch of complex calculations, and then they would only start building on a very specific day, known as Ashwini Day, which is tied to the lunar calendar in Hindu astrology. It's this amazing blend of precision engineering and cosmic timing.
Okay, so you've built this incredible ship. That's one challenge down. But now you have to actually sail it. And that required a completely different but just as impressive level of scientific knowledge. Everything from understanding the ocean itself to creating the technology you needed on board.
These guys really understood their environment. They knew there wasn't just one kind of tide. They had names for two different types. The Kazaji tide, which is when the water moves in towards the shore, and the sea tide, when it's flowing back out to the ocean.
And knowing the difference, that was absolutely critical for getting in and out of harbor safely.
And this right here just blows my mind. It perfectly shows how advanced their knowledge of materials was. Just look at that difference. While other major seafaring cultures at the time might have used, maybe 2 different types of wood, the Tamils used 20. They had this deep understanding of which specific wood was best for every single part of the ship. That's just an incredible mastery of their resources.
Their safety systems were also just next level. We already talked about that amazing lightning conductor, but they also built ships with a detachable bottom layer. A detachable bottom. Think about that. It's an incredible failsafe. If the hull got smashed open, they could just release the damaged bottom part and keep the rest of the ship from sinking. That's ancient engineering for you. And to top it all off, back on land, they built lighthouses to make sure everyone got home safe.
So the big question is, what happened? How does an art form this advanced, something that was built up over centuries, just vanish? Well, the final chapter of this story is a tough one, and it was really shaped by forces from the outside.
The beginning of the end really started with the arrival of the British, and the sources we have are pretty clear on this. They point to a whole series of policies put in place by the East India Company that, frankly, look like they were specifically designed to take apart the entire local shipbuilding industry.
And you can see just how systematic it was when you look at the timeline. First, in 1789, an order comes down that straight up bans Indian carpenters, masons, and blacksmiths from even working on ships. Then, fast forward over 100 years to 1906. A local shipping company tries to get started, but it's basically forced out of business by the British India Company, which slashed its own rates so low that the new company couldn't possibly compete. And just like that, a centuries-old art was lost.
And that really leaves us with something to think about, doesn't it? The story of Tamil shipbuilding is such a powerful reminder that the history we think we know, well, it isn't always the full picture. It really makes you wonder, what other incredible knowledge, what other lost sciences from ancient cultures are still out there, just waiting for us to find them?